1993 was a huge year for Steven Spielberg. That summer, he released Jurassic Park, a colossal hit that redefined the summer blockbuster precedent he himself set 20 years earlier with Jaws. He could have packed it up and gone home after that, but just 6 months later, his second feature of the year, Schindler's List, was released to massive critical and commercial acclaim. It would go on to win 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and Spielberg's first trophy for Best Director. Jurassic Park also walked away with 3 trophies at the same ceremony, recognized for its groundbreaking visual effects. Spielberg's landmark year feels noteworthy for several reasons today. First, in a world where films getting greenlit seems like a Herculean feat in and of itself, having a director release 2 massively successful films in one year truly seems like a rarity today. Also, reflecting on Spielberg's triumphant year feels like looking back on a bygone era. His last 2 films, the 2021 remake of West Side Story and 2022's semi-autobiographical The Fabelmans, were critically revered, but were both considered box office flops, which in my opinion is really unfortunate, because both films were wonderful artistic feats, both showing how, 5 decades into his career, Spielberg remained at the top of his game. Miles Surrey reflects on the current state of Spielberg's career in his 30-year retrospective of Jurassic Park for The Ringer, stating, quote, "It's an undeserved fate for a film as good as The Fabelmans, but one could argue it's also something Spielberg inadvertently brought upon himself," end quote. But how much of today's cinema landscape can we lay at Spielberg's feet? In this video, I'll explore that question by taking a closer look at Jurassic Park and Schindler's List and evaluating how Spielberg's banner year has ripple effects that can still be felt today. From his breakout project, Spielberg had been building toward Jurassic Park. 1971's Duel, a TV movie Spielberg directed for ABC, features several hallmarks the world would come to associate with the director. There's the man versus monster trope, the monster here being a semi-truck relentlessly pursuing the film's protagonist. There's also the vast amounts of preparation Spielberg put in during pre-production, including extensive storyboarding of the film's action set pieces. Then there is the personal reputation Spielberg solidified while making the movie. In Stephen Awalt's book, Steven Spielberg and Duel, The Making of a Film Career, he writes of cast and crew members from Duel, who said that Spielberg remained open and enthusiastic while on set, keeping a level head and maintaining a work ethic that gained him respect. And though this was technically a television movie, Spielberg's cinematic ambitions pushed the conventions of what a movie in this medium could be, foreshadowing how he would push the cinematic form, beginning just 4 years later with 1975's Jaws. By the time Jurassic Park was ready to film in 1992, Spielberg had done months of pre-production preparation, working with visual effects artists at ILM to ensure the film would be a cinematic event. And I think we can objectively agree that he delivered on that promise. Jurassic Park, which imagines a disastrous visit to a remote island theme park full of genetically resurrected dinosaurs, remains to this day a thrilling feat of filmmaking. Just take the opening scene, which I always forget about no matter how many times I've seen this movie. We see a group of male workers watching the ominous rustling of trees at night. Surely we're not going to see a dinosaur this early, but maybe Spielberg wants to get right to it this time. But no, it turns out to be a metal crate being driven toward a loading dock. We obviously know it's holding some sort of creature, but even in these opening shots, the awe and tension Spielberg creates is undeniable. This mixture of wonder and suspense continues throughout the movie. Much like he did in Jaws, though for more technological reasons in that case, Spielberg withholds until just the right moment, allowing us to relish in them alongside the characters. Motifs like the rustling branches, ripped electric wire, the ripples within a cup of water, all work together to create movie magic leading up to Spielberg's magic trick du jour, the dinosaurs themselves. Of course, as amazing as the special effects are, This movie wouldn't hold up in the way it does if other elements weren't there to support it. There's Laura Dern being the mother who inherits the Earth as Ellie Sattler. And Sam Neill turning in a pitch-perfect performance as Alan Grant, the curmudgeon paleontologist with a heart of gold. Then there are the darker aspects of the film, articulated through Jeff Goldblum's monologues about the butterfly effect and life finding a way that become eerily, depressingly more relevant with every passing day. And though the gargantuan T-Rex and cunning velociraptors are villains on the surface, the movie's true villain is John Hammond, the eccentric billionaire blinded by wealth and pride, to believe he can engineer the return of multiple extinct species, all the while thinking he has full control of the outcome. He says things like, "Creation is an act of sheer will," as if that excuses the death and destruction his will to create has wrought. It's an aspect to the story Spielberg was obviously interested in telling, the intentions of which are still reflected on 3 decades later. In his retrospective of the film for The Ringer, Miles Surrey writes that the quote-unquote concerns embodied within the character of Hammond must have been top of mind for the director, resulting in his telling of, quote, a cautionary tale about what happens when those at the forefront of technological breakthroughs are driven by greed and oblivious to their own naivete, end quote. Scott Tobias, in his own 30-year retrospective of the film for The Guardian, takes it a step further, likening Hammond to the director himself. Quote, it's hard to understand him as a villain, though, because Spielberg sees a little of himself in a commercial visionary, bringing wonders to the masses. He's just another fool in charge, end quote. It's an interesting comparison I'm not entirely sure I agree with. Sure, it's no secret that Jurassic Park, with its technological innovations that continue to hold up today, and as some could argue look better than what some CGI is able to capture today, plus its enormous box office success, has inadvertently helped herald our seemingly endless cycle of mining IP for profits instead of investing in new stories. It's even become a part of that cycle now with the latest trilogy of films, of course without Spielberg directing. But I think back in 1993, Spielberg probably saw himself more in Alan Grant, still wide-eyed and bushy-tailed at what advances technology could bring. He becomes a gatekeeper of that innovative technology while being simultaneously repelled by it. Grant, and perhaps Spielberg, believes that there's still a chance to close Pandora's box, without fully realizing, or wanting to admit, that he's partly responsible in opening it. In very different ways and circumstances than John Hammond, Oskar Schindler also wants to create a world of his own making. Schindler's List tells the true story of Oskar Schindler, a German industrialist attempting to make big business in Nazi-occupied Poland. As portrayed by Liam Neeson, Schindler is an enigmatic, charming businessman. He's also a member of the Nazi Party, who begins the film largely indifferent to the heinous treatment of the Jewish community around him, including those employed at his enamelware factory. Once his fellow Nazis begin rounding up Jewish people for deportation and extermination, does Schindler begin to defy the will of his political party, bargaining his own fortune in deals with SS officers, including the rotten to the core Commandant Amon Goth, to spare the lives of his Jewish employees. By the end of World War II in 1945, Schindler's actions had saved the lives of over 1,000 Jewish people. Spielberg resisted making Schindler's List for years, insisting that he wasn't yet ready to make such a personal story. Spielberg himself is Jewish. When he finally felt ready, Universal Pictures approved, so long as he made Jurassic Park first. And because Spielberg wanted to film Schindler's List in Poland during the winter, this meant that he began production on the film while Jurassic Park was still in post-production. Shooting on location was crucial for Spielberg. He wanted to get, quote unquote, as close to reality as possible to the brutality the Polish Jews faced, first in the ghettos of Krakow and later in concentration camps like Auschwitz. The harsh winter conditions exemplify these inhumane conditions, as does the documentary style cinematography Spielberg and his cinematographer Janusz Kaminski used in these specific sequences. It's not only an effective technique, but an innovative one for Spielberg. Known mostly for his flashy, smooth camera work, this grittier directing style was a significant departure for him. Outside of the documentary style Spielberg channels, another notable aspect of Schindler's List is its black and white cinematography. On making this choice, Spielberg says that he, quote, doesn't know the Holocaust in color, end quote. Instead, using the black and white Holocaust documentaries he and much of the general public would be familiar with as his reference point for capturing this story. This stuck out to me, not because the general thesis of what Spielberg is saying here is unexpected. I think most of us would have theorized that the use of black and white is effective in situating the horrific events of the Holocaust firmly in the past. Really, it's the way that Spielberg contextualizes his reasoning that stuck with me for multiple reasons. First, his insistence on keeping things on screen, quote unquote, as close to reality as possible in Schindler's List parallels to something he said about his vision for the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. In a behind the scenes interview while filming that movie, he says he wants the dinosaurs to look, quote unquote, as real to the audience as if they were watching a National Geographic documentary. Using the reference point of documentaries for both films not only shows Spielberg's dedication to authentic storytelling, but for storytelling that would be accessible to a mainstream audience. Remember, we're in the early 90s, and Spielberg has countless successful blockbusters under his belt. And even if he didn't believe audiences would be, quote unquote, receptive to the amount of violence depicted particularly in Schindler's List, his awareness of audience tastes and attempting to fulfill their expectations speaks to just how intuitive a director he'd become at this point in his career. This audience mindfulness, especially when it comes to Schindler's List, creates a tension between Spielberg's intentions and the effect it has on the viewer. Members of the Jewish community have, both at the time of the film's release and in more recent retrospectives, criticized its point of view and intended audience. As Jewish historian Deborah Lipstadt stated in 1993, quote, "We, the Jewish community, were not the audience. It was the general public," end quote. She continues, "Is it the best depiction of the Holocaust in film? I don't know. But did it reach a tremendous number of people who would otherwise not have been reached? Did it bring the story to countless people who no other filmmaker would have been able to reach? There is no question." As someone who isn't Jewish, I can't speak for the first part of Lipstadt's statement, but her latter assessment of the film's reach holds up. For many, Schindler's List, like the Holocaust documentary Spielberg modeled it after, is a formative text in understanding the horrific era of the Holocaust. An NBC Nightly News segment that ran in remembrance of the film's 25th anniversary back in 2018 interviews high school students at the time who were shown the film in history class and the impacts it had on them. My own engagement with the film began back in my high school days. I remember being horrified at the hyper-realistic scenes in the ghettos and at the camps, convinced that what I was seeing could in no way be a fictionalized recreation of what had actually occurred. This is where the film's use of black and white gives me pause now, and while Spielberg's comment about not knowing the Holocaust in color stood out to me upon this viewing, it connects to the way our collective imagination thinks of black and white film and photography. In a 2022 article for IndieWire that explores the history of black and white film and its uses in modern cinema, Lucy Marzola writes of black and white's ability to situate viewers into the past. Quote, "Since this is how we see a vast majority of images from this period, our imagination renders the past itself in black and white." End quote. While the use of black and white is an effective immersion technique, I think that in some cases, it can act as a barrier to our perception of what's depicted. Because we often associate black and white film and photography with the distant past, what we're seeing becomes history, something that's already happened and can't possibly happen again. We're supposed to learn from history and do better, right? But of course, what we see in Schindler's List, rampant anti Semitism, the mass genocide of European Jews and other minority groups the Nazis didn't see as their master race, aren't incidences isolated to this particular period of time. In 2023, anti Semitism is on the rise, and as we witness genocides in Gaza, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and other countries throughout the world, it's evident that the themes and ideas explored in Schindler's List are present as modern history unfolds. These are terrible truths we must collectively confront, in full color. At the conclusion of his book on the making of Duel, Stephen Awalt has this to say about Spielberg's impact on movies. Quote, his technologically innovative works, like Jurassic Park, pushed the whole language of cinema forward into a new age. All of these films, cultural touchstones that captured the eyes, imaginations, and even the hearts of the world, all of them created by the man who started dreaming of sharing the way he viewed the world through a camera in his bedroom as a little boy. End quote. Spielberg turns his own camera on this little boy making movies in his bedroom in The Fabelmans, his most recent movie as of 2023, and, as mentioned previously, one of his less commercially successful ventures. Does this mean that the name Steven Spielberg doesn't carry the same weight as it did 30 years ago? The more interesting question might be, does it matter? There's no question that Spielberg, regardless of whether he knew of the far-reaching impacts, simultaneously inspired generations of budding filmmakers to pick up their own cameras, while also being part of an ecosystem of filmmaking that would hinder others' ability to innovate the medium to the degree he was able to. Regardless of where you come down on how Spielberg's recent films hold up when compared to his past efforts, and whether the tipping of the cinematic scales rests on his shoulders, the fact is, there's something to hold up. Much like the reckless experiments done on dinosaur and frog DNA on Isla Nublar, Spielberg's contributions to cinema and popular culture can and should be critiqued, but they can never be undone. Their ripple effects, long freed from the small plastic cup of water we see in Jurassic Park, will undoubtedly continue to be felt for years to come. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like and or share this video if you enjoyed it, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you would like to see more videos like this from me. You can also give me a follow on my socials or take a look at my blog from last year. Thank you so much. I will see you next time.